What really inspires someone to lead in education? And how do they actually transform a struggling school? We're going to dive in that tonight. We're going to get into a powerful conversation with a leader who not only talks about it, but walks the walk as well, turning around the school and being the Michigan Principal of the Year in the process. This is not just a feel-good story, right? So many times we get on this platform, we look for stories, but this is real life where we're uncovering core principles, values that drive real change in education and how you can apply them in your own school. My next guest, get ready to be inspired by my next guest, Chanavia Patterson. Chanavia is going into this incredible journey as a leader of a school. Now she's transitioned from leading a school to now training leaders to do the same exact thing and has evidence to show. When we talk about transformation, it's not where you started, it's about where you transform into. Well, listeners, here's what I need you to do. Get ready to get on this leadership journey, to a next level leadership journey. And I'm sure you're going to have some powerful tools that's going to help you transform your school right now or for this upcoming school year.
Transforming lives. Inspiring stories from educators worldwide. Impact happening worldwide. Your transformation starts here.
All right, guys, my next guest, I call her Principal P, Principal Patterson, whichever one. But my next guest, and I'm going to bring to the stage, is Principal Chanavia Patterson. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
How are you this night, evening, however we want to put this time zone thing, right?
I'm well. It's definitely evening where I am.
Gotcha. Well, first thing I want to ask is, how is the weather?
Cold. It's cold in Michigan, cold and windy right now. I think we might be at 20 degrees, maybe. That's not
No.
with the wind chill.
Oh no. See, that's why I do the math and I don't do all that other stuff that's attached to the math. Those numbers are cold. You said wind chill. So definitely.
It's cold.
Awesome. Well, I want to jump right into it, right? So, for me, my introduction to Principal Patterson was through social media. And I'm just going to let y'all know I've been trying to do this for a while now to get her up on this screen. So I'm excited. So if I smile a little bit, don't y'all worry about it, not one bit. Go ahead and share this with your friends. Let them know that this is a powerful conversation that is about to transpire and some powerful information that's going to help you transform your school. So I want to jump right into it with this question. Let's start with your story. What initially inspired you to pursue the leadership role in education?
Oh my goodness. So interesting enough, I love being in the classroom. And honestly, the best leaders are those that love the classroom. And when I was a middle school ELA teacher, and during my time as a middle school ELA teacher, I began coaching from the classroom. And that basically means mentoring and my colleagues and, being that support person for them is how it truly started. It wasn't that, I'm going to go into the field of education and I am going to be the principal of the year one day or something. It was the love of educating our youth, specifically kids in urban environments. And the leadership track naturally happened for me because I began coaching from my classroom and being an influence to the other educators that were in my hallway or on my team or in my wing. And once I continued to do that, coaching my colleagues, the next step to go into the full-blown administrative side of leadership was a natural progression for me. And I opened a school, a brand new K-8 school here in Detroit, as the founding assistant principal. And it was during that time frame where I was not only the leader, I began to see
Yeah.
leaders. And you don't see leaders until you're in that seat and understand what influence really is and what it means to move other adults that can impact children. And yeah, so that's kind of my background. And then, of course, it went on from there to become principal and a director of schools and things like that. But yeah, my story really started from coaching in the classroom, because all great leaders start in the classroom first.
Absolutely. And that's good to hear. And you instead of saying leadership, you said influence. So I love how you made that transition right there. So uh, when I think about leadership, John Maxwell says that, right? Leadership is influence. No, you know. So my next question is, how was stepping into leadership transform not only your work, but how did it happen in your personal growth as well?
Um, Definitely, when you become a leader, specifically in an urban school, you learn how to be resilient.
Mm,
If you don't have resilience in you already, it's going to show up when you become a leader of an urban school. So I
right.
would definitely say my leadership transformed by showing how resilient I truly am,
Mhm.
was,
Right.
the adaptability that's required, and just the importance of being like very intentional with my decision making. So both on the professional side and as I grow personally, I'm still seeing those same principles show up. Resiliency. I'm a mom of boys, it's resilience
Yeah.
still shows up. Adaptability shows up in decision making. So I think those are like the core principles that show up as a leader in your professional growth, but also in your personal growth as well. I will also say, when I made the transition from being a director of schools into opening my own executive coaching and consulting firm, a lot of the other director colleagues could not understand why. It was like, well, why would you want to go start over? In their mind, I was starting over because I had reached this tippy top in their eyes of my career. And I had to help people understand that I was called to not just serve in my career, but to move from my career into my calling. And my calling is to help other leaders do what I have been blessed to already have done before.
No, that's good. And sometimes people don't understand that. Like you're here, and
Hmm.
they're like, ride it on out. But
Hmm.
it's like
Hmm.
I'm feeling uncomfortable where I am right now.
Yep.
I understand what you're saying, and there's some truth to that, but that's not my truth at the moment. And it's like, I want to park here, but I'm gonna keep moving forward because people have to understand. It sounds crazy. Why do you move from something that seems to be sustainable,
Hmm.
and to move to something that you really, honestly, if you had the time to sit down and talk to people, I got to go out and work. I got to hustle to make this happen. So
Hmm.
it's a conversation to
Hmm.
have about making that step, calling, right?
Yeah, it's a shift. It's definitely a shift from a career to your calling. I, you know, and again, it's about priorities too, like what's important to you, what do you value?
Mhm.
And I never wanted to get comfortable and complacent. And it's like once you master a certain level of leadership, why I'm gonna stay there?
Right.
Because then
Yeah.
I'm gonna get comfortable, you
Right.
know? So it's like you have to, in order to continue to grow, you have to
Yeah.
continue to evolve and elevate yourself. So it was my way of not getting comfortable and complacent. No one asked me to leave. I chose to start over, which really has transformed my life because of the lives of the other women and principals that I get to impact, not just here in Michigan, but across the country. Why would I stay in one state when he called me to do much more in more states?
Okay, we'll go there. We'll go there. Since you laid it out there like that, we'll go there. So that part where you look at, okay, I'm affecting a radius of 5 miles, 6 miles, whatever that might be, 20 miles, to now that you're branching out to where you're looking at it from a national standpoint. It's a different approach,
Mhm.
and it takes a calling to go out and do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
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 So even in that, I think the listeners need to know that it's okay,
Mhm.
because a lot of times they hear that it's not okay. Like, you know, you know, girl, what you doing? Guy, what you doing? Dude, what are you doing? But if you're talking about having a international, a national impact on education, you got to take, and it's really not a risk. It's just really going out and doing what is naturally inside of you.
Yeah, yeah, and it felt natural for me. It really did. It didn't. Is it difficult? Is it challenging sometimes? Absolutely, because I'm stepping into a territory that I have not yet mastered. So I have to learn. I'm literally doing what I teach others to do. Year one, you learn. Year two, you grow. Year three, that's your go year. And so when you do those things, you learn how to navigate all of the nuances that come with it. So I'm not afraid of a challenge, and I'm not afraid of change. And a lot of people are so afraid of change. They let that fear hold them back, where I'm not going to be afraid to do something that I know in my heart I was called to do. I got backup. I got good backup, and he got me.
Yeah, no, I know. And this is something that, as you were talking about, year one, this happened, year two, year three, this process that happens. I know that's within your content on your social media platforms, where you walk those that would, put their eyes on your content, that would listen to your content, you walk them through how to navigate that. And it's a difference in the implementation part of it, but the information is there for
Yep.
those leaders to grab a hold of it, to walk through it, because it does take a level of courage. It takes a level of confidence that can be taken as of being, having a big ego. But if you
Mhm.
don't,
Mhm.
if you don't, they're
Yep.
gonna run you over, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Absolutely.
so reflecting on your journey, we partially have kind of talked about this journey. What was one of the most impactful transformations that you led in either in a school or district, and what motivated that change?
Mm. So I would have to say there are two. One being leading my school off of the state priority list,
Mm,
in a zip code that they had deemed unsafe, in an area where they said, that ghetto school on the east side of Detroit. Uh,
okay.
why would someone send their kids there? And I would say my most significant transformation was turning that, what some call trash, into a transformation, and creating a state recognized school of excellence. And that would be number one, because
Mm,
we did something that they said couldn't be done, specifically in this area of Detroit. And then the second most significant transformation was helping other principals do the exact same thing. So, you have to test and get evidence of success. And I knew I had done it, but
mhm.
once I began to help other people do what I've done, is the influence of my leadership. And so those will be my most significant transformation, is helping other principals get their school out the mud. Whatever
Right.
the mud looks like for them. For some, it's academic mud, some
Mhm.
is behavior, some is the culture, some of it is the teacher retention issues, like whatever that mud looks like, helping them get their school out of the mud the same way I was able to do it for mine.
Oh, that's good. Because you have to identify what is it. If if you have a deficit, you can say deficit, deficit, deficit. Well, what are the reasons? What's happening here that's causing it? So that gets us to this next question. During these pivotal moments, what core principles? I know you can't lay all of your strategies out, You can't throw them all out there. I know. I read your mind before I finished the question. They need to come get the coaching. So what core principles, lay a couple of core principles of values guided, your decision in those pivotal moments?
I'm going to say this. I teach, train, coach culture-based leadership, right? I believe everything that's happening in our schools is leadership created and leadership allowed, or leadership allowed.
Ooh.
Everything that's happening in our schools is leadership created or leadership allowed. So when we talk about core principles that help to transform schools, we have to lean into culture-based leadership.
Right.
What are we doing to change the way people think, the way people act, and the way people interact in our schools? And how are we as leaders creating that atmosphere or allowing the atmosphere to happen? That's all I'm going to say.
Right. And I know better. I know better. So it's like reading this book, right? So I'm gonna come back on the stage now. All right. So it's like reading this book, and I'm just in the intro, and I've looked at the table of contents. Oh, I like this, I like this particular. Let me skim through to this. We'll look at the culture. It's the leader that is responsible for this transformation. And it's like, well, you can tune in next week.
If I was to like peel back another layer, which I'm comfortable with doing, if I was to truly peel back another layer, I talk about that 3 years you have to give yourself to learn, grow, and go.
Mm-hmm.
And my philosophy that everything that's happening is leadership created and allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Once a leader has made the decision that I am going to be the person that's going to transform my school, there are still 3 things that must be in place. They must have effective systems. They have to have the right synergy, and then they have to create sustainability within their role. So many principals tell me this role is not sustainable. And I get it.
Yeah.
And it's not sustainable by the way that they are working, because they haven't been taught how to create the systems so that they don't work so hard.
Yeah.
How do we create the synergy and the culture in our school so that our team can step up and support us? So all of those things play a part in you being able to sustain your role as a school leader. Because in leadership, it's a dance. It's not a dictatorship. And a lot of people haven't learned how to dance, how to do the leadership dance. I ain't talking about the Tamia dance. They can't do that one either. But I'm talking about that leadership dance.
Right. Yeah.
It's a dance.
Yeah.
And it takes time to learn the dance. Are you dancing up front and people can see you? Are you dancing on the side of them and you're their colleague and you're coaching them from the side? Are you dancing behind them, pushing them to go further? So you have to understand, how do you do those things? And then how do you equip your team without enabling them? And those are the things that a lot of leaders aren't given in their principal prep or their leadership program. It's like, what does this truly look like in action? What is the application behind all of this talk?
No, that's good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. Because that's important, because if you can have all the theories in the world and they sound good. Mm-hmm. But once you get into that seat, it's a different conversation. It's a different, and I love the analogy that you used of saying this is a dance, and how to navigate that dance, because sometimes when you're in it, it seems as though the walls are closing.
You're off beat. You're off beat.
And I can't talk about dancing. I'll let you have all of that. Dancing is not, I can do technology, but work with me a little bit. Step to this, 2 steps. Yeah, gotcha. That's great. So even with, I feel like you've addressed the emerging leader. I feel like you gave me that extra to address an emerging leader. That's what that emerging leader needs. Where to position themselves so that they can not carry that load, because sometimes you think, oh, you think you should work hard.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the fault of us who've been doing this work. They're watching us. They watched us. And yeah, they're going to follow that lead. And so sometimes when I'm working with the principal, I have to help them unlearn all of the bad practices that they've learned. And that takes time, because they like, but this is the way they've always done it. This is what I've always seen. I'm like, all right, throw all of that away, all of it. And that's hard. That's hard, because I'm asking them I'm disrupting what's comfortable. I'm disrupting what they have seen throughout their whole career. And I'm saying it's a different way. It's a different way. And if they trust me and they try it, they see like, wow, okay, there is a different way to do this to make it more sustainable.
That's a good point of being disruptive. Disruptive just means it a lot of times we hear the word disruptive and we think things are being destroyed, and some things need to be destroyed because they're leading us down, and we're practicing bad habits that are in the end harming us and not helping us at all. So yeah, that's absolutely. So we've kind of gotten to this point of talking about something that's misunderstood for leaders. So what's as a leader, what's one, because you've given us a lot of information in this short amount of time, what is one aspect of educational leadership that is often misunderstood or overlooked?
I know you only asked for one, but I always have to give two.
Okay.
I'm gonna give two. One is, I think people do not really realize how challenging it is to switch from teaching children to coaching adults. Mm-hmm. It's something that you just truly you can't really prepare for it until you're in it. Right. And you're doing it and you learn the skills and the practices that you have that do. But coaching adults is one of the most misunderstood practices in leadership, because it's one thing to influence a child who we can easily influence, for the most part. I don't know about some of these, new generation, but that's a whole different podcast.
They being influenced. They being influenced.
But seriously though, the coaching the adults, I don't think people realize what goes into gaining their trust and influence, especially when they have leader hurt. A lot of our other educators, they have a lot of leadership hurt where they've been hurt by prior leaders. So that will be one, is like just the art and the science of coaching adults. And then the other one I think that is not talked about enough is, how do we have omnipresent leadership? How do we establish omnipresent leadership? Because another thing that I've noticed is that our leaders, we want to be everywhere and we want to have a pulse on everything, because that's the expectation. Right. But we haven't figured out how to be omnipresent. So I work with a lot of principals on how to establish their omnipresent leadership. And that's another overlooked, misunderstood skill that is not taught or trained to principals.
Now hold up. Now we're not going to, let me find the right sound. So hold up. All right. Hold up. Let me come back, because you're not just going to skip over this whole idea of omnipresent leadership. Okay. Now I've saw that with your content, right? I get it, but no, because that is a skill that has to be built, and it's layers to it, right? You number one. Oh, see, we got to back up a little bit more, because we got to talk about the leader hurt too, because they have to get. What's the time? Okay, I'm looking at the time. That's an excellent point, because what you experience, you go and you model that particular behavior unless it's changed. Yeah. So let's see how we're going to attack this. Okay, leader hurt. All right, you've experienced hurt on the other side from another leader, and now you're moving into leadership, and whether we know it or not, we still practice those behaviors until we can identify them as something that is being harmful to us first,
Mhm.
and then we'll be able to prevent it
Yeah,
happening to others.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I help leaders. I want them to always look at themselves and know that, am I modeling what other people are looking that they should do or should not do?
Hmm.
Because our goal is to equip other leaders.
Right.
So I constantly had that in the forefront when I was a leader. For my assistant principals, I had four assistant principals, and I always wanted to make sure that what I was modeling was something that they would not have to recover from.
Mhm.
And so they're watching us. They're watching what to do, but the ones that have good discernment, they
Yeah.
are also watching what not to do.
Yeah.
And so, but if no one tells them what not to, which parts, somebody has to be there to say, no, turn left. No,
Yeah.
you need to turn right here. If no one is giving you that discernment to understand, like, is that right? They don't know. So that's why we have to end up doing so much unlearning from the hurt that they've gotten.
Okay. I'm processing all of this right now as you're just delivering it out all in this short amount of time. I'm at a point now that I can talk about omnipresent leadership, because it's like,
Okay.
because you want to be everywhere, because you want to check their pulse, as you were stating, and you can't. That's the reality of it, that
Yeah.
you can't. And it goes back to what you talked about, your initial statements about being a leader in that classroom. How do you build other leaders?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right.
Because omnipresent leadership. So we know leadership is relational
Mhm.
before it's operational. And
Good.
oftentimes we go into it with the operational side first,
Mhm.
because it's like managers or something. So when you develop omnipresent leadership and you put those systems in place, um, for example, one would be a strategy that I use, and a lot of the principles that I support also implement, is creating these advisory teams, these
Mm.
advisors. Every great leader has wise counsel, right?
Correct.
They have advisors. They
Mhm.
don't know what's happening all over the world. Somebody is advising them. So there's so much we can learn from other, how do I say this tactfully? Uh,
I'm sure you are. Go ahead. Take your time.
I don't want to say world leaders right now. The process that people put in place for the leadership.
Yep.
I'll just say that. To have that omnipresent leadership and having these advisors that's right there in your school.
Yep.
And I'm talking about like a true advisory committee of a team that help you see and hear what you need to see and hear. Is a way to establish omnipresent leadership.
And this is good because, a statement you made earlier about not necessarily understanding leadership until you are in the seat. You can hear strategies, you can hear all, these suggestions, you can hear the knowledge, but until you're in the seat and going through the process, you don't
Mhm.
understand how important omnipresent leadership is, where you have this advisory commit, you have this team that's here
Yeah.
and helping you to carry the load of the
Mhm.
responsibility. Like, it doesn't make sense until you, it's almost like Siri saying, you're going to arrive at this, new destination, and it doesn't make sense. You're looking at Siri like, this doesn't make sense. But once you get there, you're like, oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah. So I want to jump into this whole idea of the principle of the year. And I feel as though you've kind of shared some of the strategies, what happened to help accomplish this belief. We understand in leadership, it wasn't, you didn't do this alone. It was people around you. You're establishing systems. And
Mhm.
there's something that's unique that's happening. We're talking to so many leaders. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna go search this word systems with all 16 people because it's either
They
systems
all
or
said it right.
relationships.
Yeah.
I've heard every conversation, so it must be important. So I'm sorry, kind of sidetracked right there, but just kind of tell us about that. Becoming the principal of the year for Michigan.
Yeah, that was a year, I have to, when I think about it, we were just doing what we knew was best to do for kids at that time.
Okay.
Uh, it wasn't about getting an award or anything like that, but it did feel good for my school and my teachers,
Yes.
my students at the time, my parents, because after that, they shoulders was a little back a little farther. Their chest was out a little more like, yeah, we go to the best school in the city of Detroit at that time.
Yeah.
And it brought this hope back to that school. And the transformation came from as a result of transforming the school in such a short amount of time. Because I wanted to know. It wasn't based on popularity. It was about evidence of success.
Right. Yes.
Especially evidence that they didn't think could happen,
Right.
And I would have to say it came as a result of focusing on people over the process.
Mhm.
My central office did not agree with a lot of decisions that I made, and I didn't care. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I knew what was best for my teachers. I
Right.
knew what was best for the students that I served, and they didn't agree with everything that I did, and I did not care.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, and me being able to stand my ground on doing what was right,
Mhm.
becoming principal of the year was just like the result of that work. The culture. We were a culture first school. I'll never forget my first year in there. It was dark. It was gloomy. It was, not a good place. Nobody wanted to be there. And I started with, even though my central office was focused on the test scores, because
Right.
that is what keeps your doors open. You got to
Right.
change. You got to get you got to change the test scores. And I was like, I don't care about them test scores right now. You want to change test scores, you got to change culture first. People over process. And so I spent the first year, once I got there, of course, we had this mass exodus because it was a lot of who she thinks she is energy.
Right.
Coming in, making adjustments and things like that, all based on things that I knew what would work. Everybody wasn't in alignment, and it was okay. I don't subscribe to the people pleasing energy. So either you were going to be in alignment to what we were going to do to transform this school, or you weren't. And so after that first year, the second year, everyone could see like, okay, I see where you're going with this, Patterson.
Yeah.
It was I didn't get so much pushback because I know how to lead change.
Yeah.
It wasn't going in just ripping Band-Aids off, which it might have felt like that. But I was very strategic, and there's a process that I'm teaching soon on how do you lead change, because oftentimes they teach you how to manage change. Like once it's done, oh God, now that's reactive. Here we go with this reactive stuff again. I want to lead change from the front. So I had to design what our school was going to be in order to get those results that we got. And that ended up turning into me becoming principal of the year, because students, the academics naturally got better because the teacher were happy to be there. There's a direct correlation.
Right. Yeah. And I agree.
Culture first.
And I believe that if you don't, you can go in and try to be Mr. or Mrs. Fix It.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have that culture at a place, and it gets to a point, I like what you said, you're going to clean it out, and you got to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Be okay with that.
I got to be okay with that. And let me talk about that, because I know that's a sticky point for a lot of people. It's, teacher shortage, teacher retention, whichever way you want to name it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in this feel over 20 years. I think we had 20, maybe you stop counting after 20, but whatever it is,
Yeah.
same story, different year.
Yep.
It was a teacher shortage 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
We struggle with retaining teachers 20 years ago. Same story, different year. So I get it where we're trying to hold on to who we have, but if the people we're keeping in those seats are not willing to be in alignment to your vision as the leader, they're not willing to do what's best for the students that are sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
You ain't got to go home.
And that's real leadership talk. I mean, you have to sit down and have these authentic conversations to say, yeah, and it is, and you gotta, and you many times can't look back and say, be careful, I go down this track. I'm gonna pivot right there because I was going down the track. I need to go down that track. So with that being said, nice pivot. So you talked about, what, supported what made, you become that principal of the year. You talked about just having just this shift in your school. It was not just you, establishing culture. So, what transformation do you foresee in the future? Like what, how will your guiding principles shape that vision? You kind of leaked a little bit. Okay. I didn't mess with it. I respected what you were saying is coming. I look forward, but what's happening moving forward for you?
Let me share this. The request that I've been getting a lot lately is how to lead through change, one. The second biggest one, which I completely foresee is going to be the biggest transformation leaders need to prepare for, is how do you lead the new generation of teachers?
Go ahead.
The educators that are coming into the field of education now require a different type of leader.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Everyone that's coming into education is not necessarily coming in as a career. Some see this as an option.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do as leaders to navigate that? And so leading through change, leading the new generation of teachers are areas that we need to truly pay attention to in the coming years. That's where I see the future of education. In addition to the technology things that are happening, that's not my lane of expertise, so I don't speak on it. But what I do know is that the teachers that are in front of our kids now require a different type of leader.
So this is
generation. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this is supposed to happen on the front end of interviews, where we get real strong at the end with that statement, because if you don't because many times we, you push your teachers, okay, you need to make sure you adjust your instruction. You need to adjust your instruction. You make these changes. But now when you talk about as a leader, that's it requires the leader to make some changes that you really don't know. You may not have research behind it right now. And you have to be careful of saying go by your gut. But it's like you have to look at leadership in a different way. So that's great.
And there's no right or there's a wrong way to lead, but there's no, I think, like you said, we are so accustomed to trying to change policy and procedures and the people.
Mm-hmm.
We try to change the people when now we are the ones that have to change. We have to adjust. We got to adjust the way we speak to them. We have to adjust the when I say adjust expectations, I'm not saying lower expectations, but
Right.
there are just some nuances that we have to make adjustment to, and we have to be okay with that because this is a new generation. So yeah.
I'm gonna be respectful. I'm gonna leave that alone. That's a whole conversation. So I definitely you have the person right. Let me go full screen so that you see the person that you need to contact to have these conversations. She's gonna lead you through it. I have her on full screen, and as I have on full screen, it is 2-minute warning. You have the floor, Principal Patterson, and once you're done, I'll pick back up. You got the floor.
2 minutes? Wow. Okay.
Well, I'm a football guy. You don't necessarily, you can take a minute, whatever time. We're just gonna cut you off at 2. That's all.
No, I'm just gonna go back to what I believe. And I believe that everything that happens in our schools is leadership created or leadership allowed. And we as leaders have to decide, are we creating the things that are happening in our schools, the good things and the not so great things. If you see something great is happening in your school, you created that. You are allowing those good things to happen. If you see some things happening in your school and you're turning a blind eye to it and like, oh my God, I'm just going to act like that, I don't see that, you're creating dysfunction. You're allowing dysfunction to happen. So everything that happens in our schools is leadership created or leadership allowed. And we have the influence to change it.
Well, thank you so much for just coming through and dropping these nuggets, representing the state of Michigan. Okay, shout out. So if you could, I'm gonna drop you in the background, and 2 or 3 minutes after we close this out, I'm gonna close it out.
Okay.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, understand those individuals coming on this podcast are the truth. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I kind of back up a little bit. I'm going to bring you leaders that have evidence of transformational impact. I'm gonna bring you leaders that bring a quality message to help you change. That's what's happening with 50 educators from 50 states. And so far, I think this is number 17. And I have not been disappointed on any of these interviews. I have to do my homework. I will say that. But I want to say to you so much, thank you so much for joining. And it is time to go subscribe to this YouTube channel. And you all